Alright, Travis Wingoodsell. Let's see if I can get that translation video done here for you that I've been promising. We'll start with a comment review just 7 hours ago. So 10 o'clock, around there, last night. This was on an old video. This was after conference. And so I'm sure she watched conference. And so Russell M. Nelson, hinge point repetition of history. And she should have seen the thumbnail. Maybe she didn't know what it meant. And this is the whole point for translation, is you need to understand picture representation in order to translate correctly. And we're going to get to that. So the picture, if you're wondering, has the inverted pentagram of Lucifer, Brigham Young, a caption. I can't remember what it was that I put there, if it was a scripture or something like that. And then Nelson's brand new idol god. He described it himself. And it was Irene who gave us the word hinge point, where he said the church is hinge pointing in a whole new direction from that April conference this year. And yeah, that should terrify Mormons. Yet, Kathy Price, who has no picture, who has no content on her YouTube channel, thought it was necessary to come on to my video and make a comment about never coming again. She says, "Shame on you. What is wrong with you?" What is wrong with me? They did it in conference. This is my commentary of what they did. What do you mean, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with you, Kathy? Why didn't you see it? Why didn't you understand what it was they are doing? Why are you being made the fool? Shame on you. And so then she continues, "You disgust me." Do I? That's a little harsh for a Christ-like person such as yourself, who's not hasty to judge, and who doesn't judge wrongfully, but judges righteously, and so not worth any more of my time. So she didn't get very far into the video, because she heard something that was offensive, shut off her brain, and shut off my video. That's Mormonism. They get offended, and they don't listen to a single thing you say after that. You don't exist. You're not worth their time, because you said something they disagree with. And Mormons claim to be tolerant, loving, kind, Christ-like. Bullshit. So banned. She's never coming back anyway, so why does it matter? So translation. Let's get this out of the way. Because interpretation and creation go hand in hand. Alrighty, there's two places in the Doctrine and Covenants that talk about prophet, seer, revelator, and translator. Prophet, seer, Translator. The first one is in section 107, verses 92. And we'll start with 91. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and to be like unto Moses. That is crucial to understand, because we'll get into it. Behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, revelator, translator, and a prophet, having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head of the church. And so, I challenge you, Mormons, if you've not been offended already, and you've not left my video already, go to every single general conference where they have the solemn assembly and the sustaining votes. In general conferences, all of them. Search for all of them. The videos go back to 71 on the church's website. That's when they started doing the videos. Before that, you got to find the audios. You will notice one of those things is not belonging. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just isn't the same. Can you guess which one is not like the other? Can you guess before the song ends? Something like that. Sesame Street. Translator. The LDS prophets, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with the president of the office of the high priesthood, who presides over the whole church and is like unto Moses, does not have the key of translation. They don't announce it. Out of sight, out of mind, right, Mormons? Yeah, it's not out of mind. Mormons all know, oh yes, he's a translator. Because of me. Oh no, you can't translate. Only the president of the church can translate. What? What are you talking about? All you need is the key. When you have the key, you can translate. It's not complicated. So, let's go back in time. We'll give you some church history. The Smiths family. In Vermont, it's established that they attended the New Israelite Church. It was a Congregationalist branch off. It's a variation of Congregationalist. Nathaniel Wood came into Vermont, not too far from where the Cowdreys lived, because the Cowdreys are cousins to Lucy Mack and her family. And he set up his New Israelite Church in that area, and he believed in Hebrew as the angelic language. And so Jewish mysticism was also a part of his religion. And they all were taught and learned Jewish mysticism, among other things. And members were polygamous, but we're not talking about polygamy, because Smith Sr. never became a member. Neither did the Cowdreys. You had to be a member in order to get the women, and they didn't become members. But they were interested in Justice Winchell when he joined, and the counterfeiting lessons that he taught the members, and the treasure hunting with the divining rod. And that was all from Justice Winchell, his additions to the organization. And so the Holiness to the Lord parchment, that's a star chart. from Jewish mysticism. And so you'll see pentagrams in the four corners, stars, four corners of heaven. And we know that he was also, Smith Sr. was also involved in Freemasonry because of Hiram's birth in 1800. Was named on the official court documents as spelled Hiram, not Hyrum. That happened after 1826. And so we know that Smith Sr. was a part of Freemasonry because we have on record of him being a Master Mason in 1818 at his assigned lodge to be the Master Mason of in Canandaigua, New York. We now know which lodge it was. It was the York Rites. There were also the Scottish Rites. George Washington was a lesser-known Freemason lodge, but the two main ones were Scottish and York. And the Smiths were a part of the York. And so now we have to talk about the York Rites, because that's how you do church history research, is you find out something, well then you got to investigate that. You find more stuff, you got to investigate that, and so on until you finally get the whole picture of what's going on. So in the York Rites, their highest ranking is the Knights Templar. Now we got to branch off again. And so the Knights Templar, they're the Friday the 13th guys. And I've been talking about this. They got started with the Pope saying, go to Jerusalem, do some digging, see if you can find whatever. Proof of Jesus, who knows. So they go to Jerusalem on their quest. Not for the Holy Grail, that's what they found. Yes, King Arthur comes from the Knights Templar and this whole historical occurrence. So why they're trying to go back to 300 with King Arthur, the movie, which is an excellent movie, but nonetheless, no, it's from the Knights Templar. And so they find something. Digging at the mound of the Solomon's Temple, the ruins of the temple. And they go back immediately to the Pope. Say, we found something. We don't know what it is. We don't know why the Pope then granted them knighthood and granted them the monopoly business to escort pilgrims back and forth safely to the temple for the pilgrimage. And but yeah, they became rich because they had to have sheep and other types of food to take care of the pilgrims on their journey and selling and such. And so they became filthy rich because there was a monopoly business of a pilgrimage. And over time, as popes go on, a new pope rises that did not know what's going on with the Knights Templar and was a little unhappy with their rise to power, rise to wealth, and their attachment to Egyptian records and Egyptian religion. And it got to the point where the Pope was uncomfortable that they were straying from his church and his God by association, and thus worked with one of the kings of Europe to cause what became known as Friday the 13th, as they tried to round up and massacre the Knights Templar. But a large number of Templars, Templar, if you're not aware, temple, having to do with Solomon's Temple, Knights of the Temple of Solomon. And so in Freemasonry, they have Hiram Abiff, who is murdered at Solomon's Temple as their passion play for their ceremonies. And the audience is involved in the whodunit mystery. And but the Knights Templar take off to an island up by Finland, Norway, up in that area. They pick up the rune language and alter it for their particular coding, and then they sail to America. And we know that they've done this because we found the Knights Templar runes on the Kensington stone giving their date of 1363. Yeah, long before Columbus. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So yeah, that's the Knights Templar who discovered America. Not Columbus. And he didn't even discover America, it was the islands down below. And then it became Plymouth Rock with the Pilgrims. Anyway, so yeah, the stone is a land ownership trade, a contract that was made with the Mandan Indian tribe in the Dakotas area, and they gave the land east of the Dakotas to the Knights Templar. And so the Knights Templar then took records in Egyptian, because we have found some that were written by Templars trying to replicate the Egyptian in caves in southern Illinois. That's where they intended to build the New Jerusalem, was here in America in southern Illinois. As they buried plates, metal plates, with Egyptian writing in the ground in the caves. Yeah, I think we can now go to the Smiths again with the history. And so William Morgan comes to Canandaigua. It's not exactly sure what year he first got there. If we are to understand the coding correctly, he came there in 1823. That's when he first appeared in Canandaigua. Now, how am I getting the date of 1823? Remember church history? What happened in 1823? Moroni, which was actually Nephi. Joseph Smith always called him Nephi. It was afterward that Willard Richards was ordered by Brigham Young to alter the history and change things. And the church says, oh, it was to correct the errors. The Book of Mormon was written a certain way. And one of the Mormons, I think it was Parley P. Pratt, maybe, I can't remember, but it was under Brigham Young's direction to suggest an edit for the Book of Mormon. And they published the Book of Mormon with this editing. Joseph Smith read it and said, no, put it back the way it was. I do not accept this version. And it was restored to what the original version was. And then after Joseph was murdered, Brigham Young ordered the edited version again. So there's a little bit of history there. 1826, William Morgan is arrested because they want him silent. Not Joseph Smith. He's the Master Mason of the York Rites. William Morgan is York Rites. He's 7th rank. But it's not his temple. It's Joseph Smith Sr.'s temple. He's the Master Mason, even though that's only a 3rd rank. William Morgan is trying to warn people about the threat to America. That the Illuminati had infiltrated the Scottish Rites Lodge. That's why he's going to his fellow York brethren. And that they are planning a coup d'etat of the American government to destroy the Constitution and return America back to a monarchy. Not complicated. We declared independence from a monarchy and created a constitution. And obviously, King George was furious and upset. But this wasn't the only person who was upset by that. There were Americans in the colonies who were also upset that we declared independence. And so thus the Scottish Rites infiltrated Illuminati, then went and became Confederates, and caused the Civil War to overthrow the government and restore a monarchy. Jackson Davis, is that the president of the Confederates? Can't remember. And so that's where the Cooper Smith shop of Joseph Smith Sr. comes into play, because you need to store up gunpowder. That's what they used for their pistols and their rifles, was the gunpowder. You had to pack in the gunpowder, fire, pack in the gunpowder, fire. The pistols had balls, so you didn't need the gunpowder for those. But the militias used the rifles. They didn't use the pistols. And so you needed to have barrels of gunpowder for the militias. And so Joseph Smith Sr., being the Master Mason, found it necessary to use his Cooper Smith shop to supply his Canandaigua militia with the gunpowder barrels. And with gunpowder, you can't use metal, because it will spark, cause fires. So you got to use copper. And I'm sure many of you are aware that gold plates would weigh around 200 pounds, according to the measurements, whereas copper plates would be much lighter, 40, 50 pounds, something like that. And but you may also not know, or may know, that copper was also used for printing. You have to first write out on parchment your book. Then you have somebody who takes the writing on the parchment and puts it on copper plates. And it requires special glasses to be able to read the copper plates, to then put them into the press font for the printing press at the whatever press you're going to. The Batavian press with David Miller was the one that hired or invested in William Morgan, and so when he got arrested the second time, it was clear that they weren't going to allow William Morgan to finish his books technically, because he also wanted to talk about the Mandan Indian tribe as well, discovered by Lewis and Clark. And yes, it all has to do with New Jerusalem. And unfortunately, William Morgan had to flee the country because they were giving him clear warning with these 2 arrests to stop trying to publish these books and expose us, or make you an offer you can't refuse, from The Godfather. And so it befell Joseph Smith Sr. as the Master Mason in Canandaigua to organize William Morgan getting secreted out of America to save his life, because it was clear that they weren't going to allow him to finish his books. And so they did. They went up into Michigan, near Niagara, and in New York by Niagara, and that's where Thomas Monroe was found in the lake with William Morgan's clothes. And so we don't quite know what happened to Thomas Monroe, but they thought it was William Morgan, and they were going to just say, oh, okay, case closed. Except that his wife said, that's my husband, but those aren't his clothes. And so she sort of ruined that, but we don't know if Thomas Monroe was murdered, or if Thomas Monroe sacrificed his life to save William Morgan so that the publication could continue by someone else under a different name and title. So that's important to understand in church history. You must also understand that in 1822 the Rosetta Stone was published as being deciphered. Jean Champollion had taken over from the previous guy and had been working on it, and because of his knowledge of Coptic, he recognized the phonetic equivalents with certain Egyptian characters, and was able to figure it out with the Greek Coptic Egyptian connection. And so if you don't know the Rosetta Stone, it was discovered by Napoleon's soldier, and so Napoleon gets the credit for it. There was first book of Napoleon. Let's see. Is that the one? I don't think that's the one. Let me check. Book of Mormon. Okay. People are trying to connect the two together. The first book of Napoleon, the tyrant of the earth. So yeah, let's. I'm title, "No, don't go away, come back, come back, come back." And the Napoleon book threw me off. Alright, so if I remember, I'll come back to it. But the first book of Napoleon is being discussed as one of the plagiarized books in the Book of Mormon. And like I've been trying to indicate, the Book of Mormon is encoded. I've already done the church history as a coded message. As William Morgan, I said, is likely to be Nephi, Moroni, who visited Joseph Smith, which was actually Joseph Smith Sr. as the Master Mason. Notice that he talks to his father at the farm after his first encounter with Nephi that whole night. Yeah, interesting. But the Rosetta Stone has Egyptian glyphs, hieroglyphs, and it has Egyptian demotic or hieroglyph or hieratic. I think it's demotic, and then Egyptian, or not Egyptian, Greek, Koine Greek. And it was during the Ptolemy period, 130 something around there BC, and finally discovered by Napoleon, and then finally deciphered by Jean Champollion. The interesting thing is the manner in which he was able to decipher it was by the key of Ra, the head god of the Egyptians, Amun-Ra. Because in Coptic, he knew the phonetics for Ra. And and so he was able to identify Ramses, Pharaoh Ramses, on the text, and Ramses had Ra in it, and so he goes, "Oh, Ra, there we go." So then he was just able to piece it together from Greek, which is an alphabetic, as is Coptic, to apply it to the Egyptian. And so you need to understand, because Egyptologists don't. The current Egyptian that is taught by Egyptologists is, well, let's take you to the front part of the Book of Mormon. First Nephi, chapter 1, verse 2. Yea, I make a record in the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. Now replace Hebrew of the Jews with Greek of the Greeks. That's the Rosetta Stone. It is the learning of the Greeks in the language of the Egyptians. And so, yes, they're making a distinct point of order here in the Book of Mormon, but taking it from the Rosetta Stone discovery and decipherment. And there's lots of reasons with that. Because, remember, Book of Mormon was buried plates in Egyptian. And so there's the brass plates that they find. It's got the genealogy of Joseph. So it's the book of Joseph, but it's also got the kings of Judah and what's on the Jewish book, which is the Torah. And let's take you to Mosiah 1:4. And King Benjamin says, were it not possible that our father, which ancestor, Lehi, could have remembered all these things to have taught them to his children, except it were for the help of these plates. The brass plates taught them the language, educated them. For he, having been taught in the language of the Egyptians. See, the Book of Mormon, they're saying, is like the Rosetta Stone, but the brass plates is something different. It's pure Egyptian. Now, Mormons are saying, wait a minute, Book of Joseph, Book of Judah, I recognize that. Where do I recognize that from? It's a scripture mastery, isn't it? Yeah, you all know it's Ezekiel 37. So they talk about in verse 11 the Valley of the Dead, which is the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Bones of the house of Israel. And the graves. And then he goes into verse 15, which all Mormons know, having isolated out everything else in this passage. And this is where the sticks come from. Stick of Judah, stick of Joseph, and which is of Ephraim. And they'll become one. What is the brass plates again? It's the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph in one book. This is what they had in mind, that it was to be an Egyptian, that the Egyptian records would bear this out. So when the Egyptian papyri comes to Joseph Smith, they do all they can to buy them. And so from those we get the book of Abraham, as Joseph calls it, and the book of Joseph, as Joseph called it. You need to take it all into context. Joseph saw this as the opportunity to write a translation of the brass plates. And he started with Abraham. He didn't finish Abraham. He didn't really get to the Joseph papyri either. He did take a segment from the Joseph papyri and put it in facsimile number 2, the hypocephalus, as figure 3. It's Ra sitting in his boat with the eyes of Horus, indicating that he's a seer. And you, of course, know your Book of Mormon stories about Ammon talking to King Limhi. As King Limhi, as they were fleeing for their lives, came across the Jaredites' 24 gold plates. And didn't know how to translate them, couldn't read them. He said, oh, well, yeah, King Mosiah knows how to read them. He's a seer. He has the Urim and Thummim, who's able to translate them for the printer to make the Book of Mormon. And so, yeah, all of this is encoded. And notice that both the Book of Mormon and the Book of Ether, the Jaredite record, are all about the same subject matter. The destruction, the complete destruction of the people. That is the warning. And also notice, no, let's get to King David here first before I go. Because after they talk about the sticks, down here in 24, and David, my servant, shall be king over them. He's talking about Judah and Israel becoming one, and King David shall rule over them. Joseph has something to say about that. And so this brass plates with King David is part of the keys. Remember, the office of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints under Joseph Smith was a translator, as he is in the office as Moses. And I've gone over how, because we're at 41 minutes, I probably should have done this differently, because there's so much more to go into with this. But I've been talking to you guys about how the 18th dynasty, where Moses and David are both found in the names of the pharaohs, the David-Moses dynasty. And Moses is the founding pharaoh, and you also have Amenhotep. Amen is the priesthood of the god Amen Ra. And so if you remember Adam Ondai Amen and son Amen from your Doctrine and Covenants, yeah, son Amen. That's the name of our God in Mormonism. And we don't ever use that word, ever. I found it and went, oh, what does that mean? Is son to be translated also, or is son the child of? Turns out it's the child of, because Amen in Egyptian is both the father and the son. The father god, the noon god, the high god, the highest sun in the sky, is the father who goes to the queen in her chambers, has sex with her, just like Mormon theology of Heavenly Father and Mary, which in Egyptian, Mary is beloved, or is love. So Heavenly Father announces, behold my beloved son, my son of Mary. Amen, the highest sun at noon, says, behold my son of Mary, the queen. And the son is to be called Amen, son Amen, Emmanuel of Isaiah. Unto us a son is born, unto us a son is given, and the government is upon his shoulders, according to the correct translation of the Masoretic text, not shall be. And you think, no, a baby can't be king. That's not what it's referring to. It's referring to the sign of the virgin giving birth with the sun covering her, the moon at her feet, and 12 stars instead of the 9 in Leo, which means 3 extra roving planets join in conjunction. And that's from John in Revelation chapter 12. And that's what they referred to in Matthew. A virgin shall give birth, and you shall call his name Emmanuel. And it's not God with us. It's the God Amen, the high God of noon. He is the King of Kings, the great high priest. And the succession to the pharaonic throne is son Amen. So every pharaoh is son Amen. And so yeah, now I can go to Book of Mormon. And so it's in Mormon chapter 9 verse 33. And now we have written this record according to our knowledge in characters which are called among us Reformed Egyptian. Remember, the rune stone, the rune language, was altered by the Knights Templar. The Temple of Solomon, Hiram Abiff, which corresponds with Osiris in Egyptian, the death of Osiris, murdered by his brother, and the son to take back the kingdom of David and restore the kingdom of David, the 18th dynasty, which Moses, the first founding pharaoh of that dynasty, took back the kingdom from the Hyksos to restore the original kingdom of David. That's why they called themselves the David-Moses dynasty. And that's why the 19th dynasty that took over after the 18th dynasty of the David-Moseses called themselves Set, the brother who murdered Osiris and usurped the kingdom. Seti the first, etc., and Ra Moses. And so in Mormon chapter 9 we have them saying, hey, we've altered the Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us according to our manner of speech, just like the Knights Templar altered the rune stones according to their manner of decipherment and interpretation. And if our plates had been sufficiently large, we would have written in Hebrew, the learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians. But the Hebrew hath been altered by us also. And so the Rosetta Stone, the Book of Napoleon, pay attention to where the Book of Napoleon is plagiarized in the Book of Mormon. Look for the key words to then decipher the coding of the Book of Mormon with this historical context of the Knights Templar and Joseph Smith history, specifically Joseph Smith Sr. history. And so now when you go to the Doctrine and Covenants again, and I've already gone over this list of code names in the Doctrine and Covenants, I believe it's the Wikipedia page 4, list of code names in the Doctrine and Covenants. Yeah, list of code names in the Doctrine and Covenants, Wikipedia. It goes over it for you. So the 1981 version of our scriptures, the triple combination, the church service missionaries working on this tried to decipher the code names, put the real names in their place. Like it says here, the 1981 LDS edition replaced these with the real names. They missed a bunch. And they didn't do it for the Book of Mormon. Why? Because they didn't think that they needed to do it for the Book of Mormon, because they thought it was real history of the Native American Indians. Oops. And so now they're getting slammed by those who are finding out, hey, no, DNA doesn't match. Hey, no, the archaeology doesn't match. Hey, no, Mayan is not the same as Egyptian or Hebrew. Not quite. I haven't, well, never mind. I'm not going to go into that. But it goes over what they did decipher and decode. And so, oh man, yawn stretch, trying to come alive. So, it's not me making it up. These coding is real. And when you understand that the Doctrine and Covenants was encoded, now you can see why every critic is saying, hey, no, the history's wrong of Joseph Smith. That wasn't right. That didn't happen then. What's going on? He's lying to us. He's a liar. No, he encoded it. He encoded his own history. He didn't see Heavenly Father in Jesus Christ. He didn't see Nephi, which is now called Moroni. It never happened. And so that's why there's the confusion about, well, Jesus told him not to join any church, but then they had a Presbyterian pastor for Alvin's funeral after that, and then they had Joseph Smith Jr. and Emma, or goes to Emma's family's Methodist church in Harmony, Pennsylvania, not Harmony, Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. I did the video series on that because there was no Methodist church in Susquehanna. That was a refuge location because they got booted out of Harmony, which was north of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is where Solomon Spaulding and Sidney Rigdon had lived, and how Sidney Rigdon obtained Solomon Spaulding's manuscript. And then Sidney Rigdon came back into the area and was preaching just southwest, or was it directly west, of Harmony, when Joseph was also still there. So yeah, they knew each other. And so now read in the context that I've now given you, read again Doctrine and Covenants section 3. And remember, it's encoded. He's not getting revelation from God to write these things in his Doctrine and Covenants. The Lord is encoded. Now, if you've seen Batman, Robin is called a master because he's unmarried. What about Bruce Wayne, Batman? He's the Lord of the Manor. So that's your clue. Read it over again, and you'll understand who was in charge of this whole operation as the Master Mason, and what the real purpose for Joseph Jr. was, and why he's furious. And so, one other thing to point out for you is in Zephaniah. Oh man. Stay loud, stay loud. Zephaniah chapter 3. In verse 9, it says, "For then," so we need to read verse 8 first, "but will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may I'll call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent." So, what was before that? Well, as all Jews know, verse 8 contains every single Hebrew letter. All 22 letters are in verse 8. It's the only passage in all of Jewish scripture that contains all 22 letters. And it's followed up by, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language." Let me go back again to more, well, let's read it for you. "Therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, until the day that I will rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms." What was Moses' key given to Joseph Smith in the Kirtland Temple on Passover? The Jewish holiday of Passover? "Gathering the nations, that I may assemble to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy." Malachi, the messenger. "And they shall come that shall burn as an oven." And so, gathering of the nations to separate the wheat from the tares, the goat from the sheep, and have a pure language. And so let me go back again to Mormon. "And if our plates had been sufficiently large, we would have written in Hebrew. But the Hebrew hath been altered by us also. And if we could have written in Hebrew, ye would have had no imperfection in our record." Pure language. Paleo-Hebrew. Not Semitic Hebrew of the Babylonians that was forced upon the Jews after being taken captive into Babylon, but the original Hebrew before it. So if you take that into all the other videos that I've talked about with Joseph Smith talking about Moses, let's take you there. This is going to be a long video anyway, it looks like. We're almost at an hour. Section 103, starting in verse 15. "Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Therefore I will raise up a child being born and raised up unto my people." This is the Mormons. It's Joseph Smith. Who's my people? He's talking to Joseph Smith. It's the Mormons. "I will raise up unto the Mormons a man to redeem Zion, to establish the kingdom of David, to restore the kingdom of David." Wasn't that done with Joseph? Why is Joseph saying that it's going to be somebody in the future? "Who shall lead them like as Moses?" Wait a minute. Isn't it supposed to be the president of the church? Why would another Mormon need to do this? What's going on, Joseph? Because Moses, if you didn't pay attention to your Book of Mormon or Bible stories, he confronts Pharaoh. Says, "Let my people go." Who's Pharaoh? He's the religious leader and the government leader, as a theocratic leader. He's Melchizedek, king and the high priest, the righteous high priest. Restoring the kingdom of David. And so here he says, verse 21, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that my servant Joseph Smith Jr. is the man. But Joseph is saying, it's not going to be me, it's somebody in the future. And in the talk that didn't make it into the Doctrine and Covenants, Joseph gave a talk in 19 July 1840. And you can look it up in the Joseph Smith papers. Joseph Smith, 19 July 1840. Joseph Smith papers. And it'll come right up. It's the woman who was the scribe for this. And so that was a double whammy as to why Brigham Young didn't put it in the Doctrine and Covenants after Joseph died. In that 1844 version, or in the 1876 version. 76? Yeah, 76. Because Brigham Young died in 77, I think. It was the year before he died, he put out a new Doctrine and Covenants. And included this next one, section 85, the year before he died, verse 7 of 85. And it came to pass that I, the Lord God, will send. After Joseph? What? Will send one mighty and strong. Well, where does mighty and strong? Samson. Samson I've gone over. I did a whole video series on that. And that's the Sun King. I went over the Paleo-Hebrew of that. The N at the end is the determinative to identify a human, a person, as a king. If it's a place, it's a kingdom. And so Shemesh is the sun. Sun king. King of the sun. The highest sun, Amen. The son of the sun king being son Amen. Samson, the sun king. And so then he kills a lion, and a beehive forms within it. He gets the honey and eats it at his wedding feast. What's a Temple Square? If you have your wedding in the Salt Lake Temple, and if you're fortunate enough to be in room 13 like I was, you might have had it arranged to have your wedding feast at the Lion House. But here's an important thing to catch in this prophecy of Joseph Smith. Holding the scepter of power, okay, king, the king of the world, who's going to be knowledgeable in Egyptian and Paleo-Hebrew, as a translator, restoring the kingdom of David. But then it talks about to set in order the house of God. Didn't Joseph do that? What's Joseph doing here? Will set in order the house of God? What's going to happen, Joseph? I thought you restored the house of God. And thus we get to the identification of the symbolic meaning of the falling star at Temple Square, at the keystone arch of the door of the Salt Lake Temple. And not only that, but on the Seagull Gate, pointing at the government. They have taken over the government. They have taken over the temple, the religion. And thus it needs to be restored, both the kingdom and the religion. Joseph knew. And in 1840, he says, those of you in this audience are going to turn and want me dead. And he talks about the Last Supper. Is it I? Read it. He also talks about the Constitution needing to be saved. So you can hate me all you want. I wouldn't recommend it. Because Section 45 of the Doctrine and Covenants has not been decoded either. Jews are not Jews. Because where is all this happening? Not in Jerusalem, except for the sign tomorrow, which it's a 9-hour difference from Jerusalem to here, as I pointed out with Holland's exposed video by the Jewish blogger doing an interview with Holland on 8th of June. The morning here in Utah, when the lawyers would have gotten their emails of my latest filings over the weekend. So I hope you understand better about translation now and the need to have a translator. That's who also you're looking for. I have got the new playlist, Who is the Man Like Moses, from section 103. I could have done it, Who is the Man Like Samson, but nobody would have understood. So that's where it is. Verse 8. That's the president of the church, of the apostate, evil church of Lucifer, of Seti. While that man who was called of God and appointed, that putteth forth his hand to steady the ark of God shall fall by the shaft of death? What? Isn't that his job, to steady the ark? He's the only one allowed in the Holy of Holies, in the Salt Lake Temple, that middle room, ceiling room, that has that plant placed in front of it all the time, as often as they can remember to put it back. Yeah, with the altar inside and the picture of the first vision, which never happened, because it was a coded message. So, and I just went over it with you. Joseph Smith himself said it's a Mormon, not Jesus Christ's second coming. A Mormon, born and raised, mortal man, shall be that coming of Christ. That's Joseph Smith, not me saying it. That's Joseph Smith. But Joseph Smith is in harmony with all the prophecies. The second coming of Jesus is not in harmony at all. It's in direct contradiction. So, like I said, Mormons have already left because they were already offended.